number 16. Bhagavan here is elucidating on self-inquiry. How to conduct self-inquiry, what is self-inquiry, what is self, and what is the nature of inquiry. He says, Drishyavaritam chittva atmana chitta darshanam tattva darshanam. He says, he's trying to clarify to us as to how to see, how to have the clarity of seeing what I'm supposed to see. What I normally see is worldly objects. I'm completely consumed by definitions of objects around me. And that doesn't only mean objects created by human beings, like a table or a car or a house. It starts with the first object. If we go beyond the mind, first object is the body. And I'm busy identifying myself with the body. So it starts from there and then goes on to have extrapolations of my identification with the body, which is also my I thought. I'm consumed by the egotistical I thought, which is my fulcrum, which is my pivotal point, and my world is about this I. This egotistical I is my world. And I do not go beyond that. I remain besieged with all the thoughts about this I. So much so that Bhagavan has elucidated that I thought is the primordial thought. And from that I thought emanates the second person and the third person. What does he mean by that? That because of me, because of my identification with myself, I have other connections of this I, such as parents, brothers and sisters, spouse, children, etc., etc. And then objects, house, car, money, and then nature, my likes, dislikes, prejudices, my hatred, my love, my wanting to get even with things, make things better for myself, and things like that. So all those are extrapolations. He says, Drishyavaritam chittvatmanam. If you remove your seeing any other object, varitam, if you withdraw from recognizing all the other objects that you think is you or your world, remove all those objects, then what do you see? Chitta darshanam. Then you will see the self, because now you're not seeing the objects. Drishyavaritam, if you remove your vision of all the other objects, that would be Chitta Atmanan, that will purify your mind. You will be able to see that this is all a manifestation of my mind. Chitta Darshanam, Tattva Darshanam. Awareness, Chitta, awareness will dawn upon you, because then you shall see Tattva Darshanam. The truth, the reality will be revealed to you. So withdrawal from the worldly stuff is the direct method for self-inquiry, is the direct method to liberation. That's verse number 16. From here he starts self-inquiry. Drishyavaritam chittatmana chitta darshanam tattva darshanam. Removal from my definitions of everything that surrounds me is my shortcut to reaching myself, which is not externally placed anywhere, which does not have a definition, does not have a boundary, does not have an attribute, does not have a color, does not have a definition, does not have a dimension, does not have time. It is beyond all that. And therefore, if I remove myself from all these worldly definitions, I can be closer to myself, my chitta, and that will reveal the tattva, the truth, the reality of this world. The reality of this existence, not of the world. Reality of this existence, which I'll take as my existence. Did that make sense? It's loaded. For Bhagavan, it was very simple. And if you look at it, how could you paraphrase in 2 lines something so profound, unless it was coming from a divine source? Anybody who wants to try and share anything about how to withdraw our mind from the world? Has anybody tried to put that in practice and met with some success? Because in Bandhu's perception, even one little success of 1 minute is something immemorial. I mean, you cannot forget it. That moment you will not be able to forget. Yes, Peter, go ahead. You are muted, yeah.
Yes, so, you referred to the first, second, and third person. The difficulty of the withdrawing from the persons compared. Is the third person easier to withdraw from than the second person, for example? What defines the second and the third person?
Who defines the second and third person? You cut off a little bit. Did you
Sorry.
say who defines?
What defines?
What defines?
How are the first, second, and third persons defined once again?
Oh, wonderful, beautiful, excellent question, appropriate for this verse. So this is what happens. Let's unfold it. When you and I were born as kids, infants, and then we became toddlers, and we were about 2.5 years old, when we had begun to have our first understanding of things, and we were imparted by our parents to call ourselves by some name. Parents told us that I had a name. And then we started calling ourselves, and that became our first game, first exercise. Where is Peter? And Peter would put his hand on himself and say, Peter, and then say, Mama or Papa. And this is how the first identification began. It began because it was given to us by our surrounding, our parents. And from there, the definitions kept growing. Your cup, your spoon, your chair, your toy. So those, I'm going to the basics first so that we can begin to understand how this keeps getting extrapolated and expounded to a greater permutation combination. So I start with that, which is the I identification, which I did not have until the age of 2.5. I was sublime. I did not know what mother is. Even when I was told I'm Peter or Bandhu or Susan or Mona or whatever my name was, I did not know that. I was given as a name. And then I learned this is my mom and my dad. Even then I did not know their names or what their age was or what they are or who the third person is going to be until another brother or sister or uncle or aunt came. And then my toy and my cup and my spoon came. And then the extrapolations continued to mount. And then as I kept growing up, I had more definitions. I go to school, I go to college, I do this, I have a job, I get married, I have children, and those second and third persons keep expanding like a web. So the first person starts because of the I thought, which was planted into me, because of the way human beings have been habituated over a period of lives after lives after lives to identify ourselves only with this kind of worldly expressions and definitions. So Bhagavan has brought us to this point where he says, it is your primordial I thought, which is your ego, which is your mind. And mind is not an entity, which we will come to in the very next verse. He says, I think it's, manasam tu kim margane krite. But I want to halt right here to ask Peter, did that answer your question? Or at least address that question.
Yes, it addressed the question. But I don't really understand how, for example, what am I between, you cited 2 or 3 years old. What am I between 0 or 2 or 3 years old? It seems to me that I still have duality. As soon as I come into the world, I still have the sense of duality. As I'm a baby, very infant child. I still have awareness of world around me, even long before, as soon as I'm born, I thought.
Okay, that should be understood with better clarity. As you said, infantile perception of the world is not actually a perception of the world when you were 1 day old or 10 days old or 100 days old or even 300 days old, 1 year. You did not know what height means. You did not know what heat means. You did not know what danger means. You did not know what death or life means. You could fall from a height without the concept of height. You could walk into fire without the concept of the element fire. You could burn yourself and your parents stopped you. You could cut yourself with a knife because you had no perception of an object. And therefore, until the age of 2, some until 2.5, some until 3, some unfortunate infants not even up to the age of 2. If their parents were not right, or if their parents had aberration of character, they lost their divinity very early. If Sibyl, I don't know if anybody has read the book Sibyl or has known about the female character, the kid, this is a true story that happened in New York, where the psychiatrist treated a child 14 years old who had already developed 12 different personalities because the mother was a schizophrenic. And Sibyl was this kid's name, who had learned to lock and bolt the bathroom when she would go to use the bathroom by the time she was 2, because the mother used to torture her in the bathroom. So that's what I'm saying, that unless the character of the parents have an aberration, all of us have divinity in us for at least 2 to 2.5 years, sometimes 3 years. Until then, we don't know. That's why we fall and break. If a scorpion is walking towards you, and if you're a 1-year-old infant who has just learned to grab things, that's one of the initial skills you have. You grab things and put it in your mouth. You would try to grab the scorpion and put it in your mouth because you have no concept of an insect or a poison. Did that address? Did I address that, Peter? So, though you think you had the perception, you did not have the perception of the world until it was given unto us.
So, if as a baby I'm stung by the scorpion, I'm not able to sense the danger of the scorpion.
Yeah.
But I realize with horror the pain when the scorpion stings me, and at that point, how do I define that duality?
You don't
because
define
that's already
duality.
Illusion.
Sorry?
That's already illusion, is it not? That sense of distance of object is separate from myself, scorpion is separate from myself. It is already a certain stage of illusion, isn't it?
I don't know if I would call it an illusion, but I would rather point you to saying, who is it that is thinking today at the age of 60 or 70 or however old you are, about what you thought at 2 years old? Who is it that is thinking that? That is the ego that is trying to define something which is not definable or not material to the present moment. And yet it is trying to define because the nature of the mind is expanse. It wants to define everything when it comes to it. But the reality is that it did not exist then. exist in this particular moment, just as, listen to this, just as your window, your computer, your car exists in your perception, in your mind today. When you don't recognize it, it doesn't exist. That's the form of illusion that we live with, since you use the word illusion. So if you are trying to define whether what you were thinking when you were two is only a manifestation of the reasoning of this mind, which is intellectually capable of thinking, what was I thinking then? Which is not at all important. Rather, it is important to think, who is making me think as to what did I think yesterday or a minute ago? That is the nature of my mind. Is this making sense?
Yes, but it's hard for me to imagine that there is no duality when, for example, I approach a baby and that baby cries, that baby is afraid of me. Isn't that duality?
Oh, even if, let's say, baby, how old was the baby? Let me ask you a question. How old is the baby who started crying?
So, for example, a 6-month or 10-month-old baby is very happy with its mother, but it sees me come into the room and the baby sees a strange man and the baby cries. Is that not a duality?
You can say it's a duality because baby doesn't recognize anything other than mom. It's duality as a different object, different entity.
Yeah.
Maybe. You can say that. But then again, it's not duality as an intellectual duality. It is not duality because the child knows who the other person is or what the other person is, just a different form. It's a different form which doesn't give me an instinct. Instinctively, I know my mother. Instinctively, I begin to then know my father. But instinctively, from the time I'm born, I have one recognition of mother. And not even of mother, just of suckling and feel it and that touch. That's the instinct I'm born with. So let's move along. We'll come back to it for more Q&A later on.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question. That makes it more interesting. So the next verse is Manasam tu kim margane krite naiva manasam margarjavat. Bhagwan now is trying to tell us, how do I know what is my mind? So Peter, this is a good segue. Manasam tu kim, what is the nature of my mind? Margane krite, if you inquire thus as to what is the nature of my mind, naiva manasam, you shall find out there is nothing called mind. Marga Arjuvad. That is the direct path to self-realization. Again, he is giving us the way. Last Saturday, I don't think she joined us again today. The young lady asked me later on, one-on-one, how do we do self-inquiry? I said, that's what we are talking about all the time, but our mind is so seeped into not getting the message. We keep asking how to do self-inquiry. Last week also we talked about all the verses again. So here Bhagavan dispelling for us how to do. He says, look at the nature of your mind. And this is exactly, Peter, the example of the nature of my mind wants to define things. If I remove that definition, then it doesn't exist. If I don't want to think about it, it does not exist. It only exists in my mind, including my money, my house, my life, my wife, my children, my husband. Everything is in my mind. It doesn't exist. When it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. So Bhagavan is saying, Manasam tu kim margane krite. What is the nature of my mind? If you inquire thus, you shall find out naiva manasam. There is nothing called mind. It is a bundle of thoughts. Mind is ego, ego is mind. And that is my problem. I'm so egotistical that I don't want to leave it. People are afraid Majority of the people are afraid to go into non-dualistic meditative thing or meditative dialogue because they say, oh, gee, I have to lose everything because I'm so attached to it. I don't want to leave it. Just as none of us want to change our personality, most of us don't want to. You say, I don't want to change. Why? Because I love myself. Erroneously, I don't love my tattva. I don't love my truthfulness. I don't really love my reality. I love the garb of my reality, which is in this body with these attributes, which is what I love. I love my definitions. I don't love me in my heart. Actually, I'm so far removed from it, I don't even think about it. So, manasam tukim margane krite naiva manasam marga archivata. When an inquiry is done into the nature of the mind, you shall find that mind is nothing but a bundle of thoughts. And if you do this kind of inquiry, this is the most direct path of self-inquiry. And I must look at the nature, my anger, my possessions, my attachment to my possessions. Body is just, is my avaran, is my costume in this life. And that mitigates our pain. It doesn't take away the disease. And all of us have disease. Disease of our mind, disease of our ego. We all are. Only when it attaches to my body, then I begin to think more about it as a disease. Whereas it has always been a disease. Bhagavan said, life is disease. When somebody who had walked in and had talked to Bhagavan and cried a lot and said, why are these ailments and these afflictions given to my body? I'm such a nice devotee. I'm talking of someone else now. Why is this happening to me? And he kind of continued for quite some time. And Bhagavan sat there in the old hall, unmoved, immovably. He just sat there. Like some time passed by, and again he insisted, Bhagavan, give me some solace. Give me something to understand. And Bhagavan only said one word, life is disease. So we covered 16 and 17.